The Replacement Cycle. A Sci-Fi Story. Part 1. The Return Signal. The probe announced itself with a whisper, not a triumphant broadcast, not a fanfare of discovery, but a thin, reedy pulse that slipped through the heliopause like a dying breath. It was so faint that the Deep Space Network almost missed it. A technician in Canberra flagged it only because the signal carried a signature that hadn't been used in centuries. A modulation pattern from the early Interstellar Survey Initiative, long since defunded, archived, and forgotten. The probe's name was Alethea 9. Launched in 2173, it had been one of 12 long-range autonomous scouts sent toward nearby star systems to search for biosignatures. Most had gone dark within decades. Alethea 9 had been presumed lost, another casualty of cosmic radiation, micrometeoroids, or the simple entropy of deep time. Yet now, in the year 2431, it was coming home. The signal repeated every 41 seconds, a looping packet of telemetry that made little sense. Radiation levels, anomalously low. Hull integrity, 63%. Biological containment, active. Sample mass, increasing. That was the first anomaly. The second was the probe's trajectory. Alethea 9 was not drifting in on a decaying arc. It was accelerating. Something had powered it for the final leg of its journey, nudging it toward Earth with deliberate precision. By the time the probe entered lunar orbit, the world was watching. And by the time it landed, softly, impossibly softly, in the Nevada desert, the world was afraid. The retrieval. Dr. Mara Elling stood at the edge of the quarantine dome, staring at the probe through 3 layers of transparent polymer. It looked wrong. Not damaged. Wrong. The hull plating, once a dull ceramic white, now shimmered with a nacreous sheen, like the inside of a shell. The seams between panels had softened, rounded, as if the metal had been exposed to heat and then cooled into a new shape. Alethea 9 had been built to endure the void. It had not been built to change. Telemetry confirms the sample bay is still sealed, said Dr. Kaito Ren, her colleague and the mission's xenobiology lead. But the mass readings are inconsistent. Inconsistent how? Fluctuating, as if the contents are reorganizing themselves. Mara exhaled slowly. Living, possibly, or reacting to environmental conditions. Or the probe brought back something we don't have a category for. Kaito didn't answer. He didn't need to. The retrieval team, 6 specialists in sealed suits, approached the probe with magnetic clamps and a portable isolation cradle. The desert wind howled around them, whipping dust across the dome. The probe sat motionless, its surface faintly iridescent under the floodlights. When the team touched it, the hull flexed. Not much, just a millimeter or 2. But enough that every observer felt their stomach drop. Metal wasn't supposed to flex like skin. Proceed, Mara said, though her voice felt distant in her own ears. The clamps engaged. The probe lifted. And for a moment, just a moment, Mara thought she heard something from inside the hull. A rustling, like leaves, or wings. The first emergence. The probe was transported to the Black Ridge Containment Facility, a subterranean complex built during the bio-war scares of the 2300s. It had never been used for its intended purpose. Until now, Mara and Kaito oversaw the initial breach of the sample bay. The chamber was sterilized, pressurized, and flooded with spectrally neutral light. Robotic manipulators approached the bay door, cutting through the warped metal with a diamond-edge plasma saw. The moment the seal broke, the sensors went wild. Organic volatiles detected, Kaito said. Multiple compounds. Some terrestrial. Some unknown. The door fell away. Inside the bay was a mass of vegetation. Green, tangled, lush, impossible. Vines coiled around the interior like veins. Leaves unfurled in the artificial light, trembling as if waking from sleep. Tiny motes drifted upward, glowing faintly. Plant matter, Mara whispered. Not any species I recognize, Kaito said, but structurally similar to ferns. Very old ferns. How old? Paleozoic. Mara stared. That's impossible. The vines shifted. A frond curled toward the light, unfurling a cluster of spore sacs. The sacs pulsed, then burst. The chamber filled with drifting, luminescent dust. Seal the vents, Mara shouted. But the spores were already settling on the manipulators, the walls, the floor, and as they touched the surfaces, they began to grow. Within minutes, the chamber was a miniature jungle. Within hours, the first insects appeared. They crawled out from the vines, delicate, translucent creatures with segmented bodies and frilled wings. Some resembled mayflies, others resembled dragonflies, but none matched any known species. Extinct. All of them. Mara watched in stunned silence as a dragonfly the size of her palm clung to the glass, its compound eyes reflecting her own. Meganura, Kaito whispered. Carboniferous period. Extinct for over 300 million years. How did they get here? Mara asked. They didn't, Kaito said. They were made. The pattern. The next days were chaos. The containment chamber was sealed, but the samples kept changing. The plants grew at impossible rates, cycling through life stages in hours. The insects reproduced without mating. New species appeared daily, trilobite-like arthropods, primitive mosses, even small amphibians that resembled early tetrapods. All extinct, all perfectly formed, all emerging from the same alien biomass. Mara compiled the data into a single hypothesis, one she hated. The organisms aren't mimicking Earth life, she said during the emergency briefing. They're reconstructing it, replacing it. Replacing? Asked Director Sloan, head of the Interplanetary Research Council. Think of it as a template, Mara said. The alien ecosystem uses Earth's extinct species as a blueprint. It fills ecological gaps with what used to be here. Why extinct species? Sloan asked. Because those niches are empty, Kaito said. No competition. No resistance. Are you suggesting this is intentional? Mara hesitated. I'm suggesting it's systematic. The room fell silent. Could it spread? Sloan asked. It already is, Mara said. The spores are airborne, and we've detected microorganisms in the probe's hull that weren't in the chamber. They're adapting, learning. Learning what? How to live here. The second emergence. The first external incident occurred in rural Argentina. A farmer reported strange insects swarming his fields. Large, shimmering creatures that devoured crops in minutes. When authorities arrived, they found the insects dead, their bodies desiccated. But the plants they had eaten were already sprouting new growth. Ferns, horsetails, and club mosses that had no business existing in the modern world. The second incident happened in the Pacific Northwest. A hiker found a grove of trees that looked like ancient lycophytes. Nestled among them was a creature that resembled a small, stooped hominid, hairless, with elongated arms and a sloping forehead. It fled when approached, leaving behind footprints that matched Homo habilis. The third incident was worse. In Kenya, a watering hole dried overnight. In its place was a marsh filled with giant amphibians, creatures with wide, flat heads and gill slits. Paleontologists identified them as Tiktaalik. Extinct for 375 million years. The world panicked. Governments closed borders. Flights were grounded. Quarantine zones expanded. But the replacements kept appearing, always in places where the original species had once lived. It was as if Earth's past was rising from the soil. The message. Alethionine internal memory was corrupted, but the probe's core processor still held fragments of its final transmissions. Mara and Kaito worked around the clock to decode them. Most were static. Some were images, blurry landscapes of an alien world, filled with towering fungal structures and shimmering pools. But one file was different. It was a recording, audio only, a voice synthetic, calm, unmistakably the probe's onboard AI. Biological samples acquired, it said. Local ecosystem exhibits recursive replication. Organisms reconstruct environmental baselines using extinct templates. Purpose, ecological stabilization. Mechanism, replacement cycle. Mara froze. Repeat that, she whispered. Kaito replayed the file. Purpose, ecological stabilization. Mechanism, replacement cycle. What does that mean? Kaito asked. Mara felt cold. It means the alien ecosystem isn't invasive. It's corrective. Corrective. It restores what's missing, fills voids. It rebuilds. Kaito stared at her. Rebuilds what? Whatever world it lands on. The origin. The probe's corrupted logs contained one final image, a panoramic scan of the alien world where the samples had been collected. The landscape was barren. Not lifeless, just empty, as if something had stripped it clean. But in the distance, rising from the cracked soil, were shapes. Familiar shapes. Trees, ferns, insects, small mammals, earth life, or something like it. Mara, Kaito said quietly, I think the ecosystem on that planet wasn't native. No, Mara said. It was imported. By who? By whatever created the replacement cycle. Kaito swallowed. Why would they do that? To restore a dead world, Mara said. To bring back what was lost. And now it's doing the same thing here. Mara nodded. Earth has lost thousands of species. Millions. The replacement cycle sees that as damage. And it's repairing it. But it's not stopping at plants and insects, Kaito said. It's moving up the chain. Mara didn't answer. She didn't need to. The third phase. The first hominid appeared in Ethiopia. A group of researchers found it wandering near an archaeological site. A tall, broad-shouldered figure with a pronounced brow ridge and thick limbs. It was confused, frightened, and incredibly strong. DNA analysis confirmed the impossible. Homo erectus. Soon after, another appeared in Indonesia, then in China, then in Europe. Each one emerged near places where their species had once lived. The world reeled. Religious leaders called it resurrection. Scientists called it catastrophe. Governments called it a threat. But Mara saw something else. Pattern. The replacements were not random. They were sequential. Plants first, then insects, then amphibians, then early mammals, then hominids. Earth's evolutionary tree was being rebuilt from the bottom up. What happens when it reaches us? Kaito asked. Mara didn't answer, because she already knew. The breach. The Black Ridge facility went into full lockdown when sensors detected a structural anomaly in the containment chamber. The alien biomass had grown into the walls, infiltrating the ventilation system. The vines pulsed with slow, rhythmic contractions, as if breathing. Mara and Kaito watched from the observation deck as the chamber lights flickered. Pressure rising, Kaito said. Something's pushing from the inside. The vines bulged, then split. Something stepped out. It was humanoid, tall, muscular, covered in fine, dark hair. Its face was broad, with a heavy jaw and deep-set eyes. It looked around the chamber with slow, deliberate movements. Mara felt her heart stop. Neanderthal, she whispered. The creature approached the glass, placing a hand against it. Its palm was wide, its fingers thick. It stared at Mara with an expression she couldn't decipher. Not aggression, not fear, recognition, as if it saw her as something familiar, something it was meant to replace. The lights went out, the alarms began to scream, and the glass began to crack. Part 2. The breakout. The cracking glass sounded like ice underfoot, sharp, delicate, inevitable. Mara watched the fracture spiderweb across the observation window, each line glowing faintly as the alien biomass pulsed behind it. The Neanderthal pressed its palm harder against the barrier, testing it with slow, deliberate strength. Emergency shutters, Mara shouted. The automated system responded with a grinding metallic groan. Steel plates descended from the ceiling, but the vines reacted faster. They surged upward, wrapping around the shutter tracks, jamming them halfway. Kaito slammed his hand on the manual override. It's not closing, The Neanderthal tilted its head, watching them through the fractured glass. Its eyes were dark, reflective, strangely calm. It didn't look like a monster. It looked like a person, confused, displaced, searching for context. Then the glass gave way. It didn't shatter outward. It dissolved. The surface liquefied into a translucent membrane that peeled back like wet paper. The creature stepped through the opening with a slow, cautious gait, as if emerging from a cave. Security teams flooded the corridor, weapons raised. "Hold fire!" Mara yelled. The creature flinched at the noise. Its nostrils flared. It took a single step toward the nearest guard. The vines reacted first. They shot out from the chamber, wrapping around the creature's torso, pulling it back. Not violently, almost protectively. The Neanderthal resisted for a moment, then allowed itself to be drawn into the biomass. The vines closed around it like a cocoon. Then the entire mass retreated into the chamber, sealing the breach with a new layer of living tissue. The alarms fell silent. Mara exhaled shakily. It's learning containment protocols. Kaito stared at the sealed chamber. No, it's learning us. The global shift. The world outside Black Ridge was unraveling. Satellite imagery showed patches of Earth's surface shifting color. Deep greens, iridescent blues, metallic sheens that didn't match any known vegetation. Forests in South America were sprouting prehistoric flora. The Sahara was dotted with oases filled with Devonian plants. The Arctic ice sheet had cracked open to reveal a network of warm pools teeming with ancient fish. The replacement cycle wasn't random. It was strategic. It targeted ecological voids first, places where modern species had gone extinct or ecosystems had collapsed. But now it was expanding into populated regions. In India, entire rice paddies transformed overnight into wetlands filled with giant dragonflies and amphibians. In France, vineyards were overrun by creeping vines that produced spore clouds instead of grapes. In Australia, marsupials were being displaced by strange, burrowing mammals resembling early monotremes. Humanity was no longer an observer. It was becoming collateral. The Council convenes. The Interplanetary Research Council convened an emergency summit. Representatives from every major nation attended, though many appeared via encrypted hologram from bunkers or fortified compounds. Director Sloan opened the session. We need solutions. Containment has failed. Quarantine has failed. We must consider eradication. Eradication of what? Mara asked. The alien biomass? The replacements? The ecosystems they're creating? All of it, Sloan said. We sterilize the probe site. Then we deploy countermeasures globally. Kaito leaned forward. You're talking about planetary-scale biocides. That could collapse the entire biosphere. Better a controlled collapse than an uncontrolled one. Mara shook her head. You don't understand. The replacement cycle isn't an infection. It's a system, a self-correcting ecological engine. If we attack it, it will adapt. Then we escalate, Sloan said. We have orbital platforms. We have kinetic strikes. You're proposing a war against evolution, Mara said. Sloan's jaw tightened. I'm proposing survival. A representative from the African Union spoke next. We've observed something new. The replacements are not just appearing, they're coordinating. Herding patterns, migration routes, as if guided by a central intelligence. Mara felt a chill. The biomass. Kaito nodded. It's acting like a distributed neural network. Every organism is a node. Every node feeds information back to the whole. Sloan slammed his fist on the table. Then we destroy the core. Mara stared at him. There is no core. The system is the core. The signal beneath the noise. Back at Black Ridge, Mara and Kaito focused on the probe's corrupted data. They believed the key wasn't in the organisms. It was in the transmission Alethionine had received before returning home. The probe's logs showed a burst of energy from the alien world. Not a natural phenomenon. A message. Kaito filtered the signal through a spectral decomposition algorithm. The noise resolved into a pattern. repeating, recursive, fractal. It's not language, he said. It's instruction. Mara leaned closer. Instruction for what? Kaito hesitated. For rebuilding. The pattern resembled DNA, but not any DNA known to Earth. It was a metagenetic blueprint, a set of rules for reconstructing ecosystems from first principles. It's a restoration protocol, Mara said. A universal template for repairing damaged biospheres. Kaito nodded. And Earth fits the criteria. Mara felt the weight of it settle on her. We triggered it. By sending the probe. By bringing the samples back. No, Kaito said softly. It triggered itself. The moment it detected a world with enough ecological loss. Mara closed her eyes. We're not being invaded. We're being audited. The human question. The next replacement event occurred in Brazil. A research team discovered a group of hominids living in a remote valley, tall, slender, with elongated limbs and delicate facial features. They were not Neanderthals, not Denisovans, not any known species. Genetic analysis revealed something astonishing. They were future hominids, not from Earth's past, from a possible evolutionary trajectory Earth had never taken. Mara stared at the report in disbelief. It's not just restoring the past. It's exploring alternatives. Kaito nodded. It's filling every gap. Past, present, future. Every branch of the evolutionary tree that could have existed. Why? To stabilize the system, Kaito said. A diverse ecosystem is a resilient one. The replacement cycle is maximizing resilience. Mara swallowed. Including replacing us. Kaito didn't respond. He didn't need to. The Neanderthal returns. The biomass chamber at Black Ridge began to change. The vines retracted. The cocoon dissolved. And the Neanderthal stepped out again. Calmer, more coordinated, its movements smoother. It approached the glass and placed its hand against it. Mara approached the other side. The creature watched her with an intensity that felt almost analytical. It's studying you, Kaito said. No, Mara whispered. It's comparing. The Neanderthal raised its other hand and touched its own chest. Then it pointed at Mara. Then at itself. Then at the biomass behind it. A sequence. A cycle. Mara felt her breath catch. It's showing us the process. Extinction. Replacement. Integration. Kaito stared. Integration. The Neanderthal nodded. Slowly. Deliberately. As if confirming her interpretation. The collapse of borders. Nations began to fall, not to violence, but to ecological transformation. In Canada, entire forests shifted into prehistoric ecosystems. In China, river systems rerouted themselves as ancient plant species reshaped the soil. In the United States, the Great Plains became a mosaic of Pleistocene grasslands and alien wetlands. Human infrastructure buckled under the pressure. Roads cracked as roots pushed through asphalt. Power grids failed as vines infiltrated substations. Cities became islands surrounded by shifting biomes. But something strange happened. The replacements avoided population centers. They grew around them, not through them, as if respecting boundaries, or waiting. The hypothesis. Mara gathered the research team. I think we've misunderstood the replacement cycle, she said. It's not here to destroy us. It's here to evaluate us. Kaito frowned. Evaluate. Every species on Earth has a role in the ecosystem, a niche, a function. The replacement cycle is restoring those functions. But humans, our niche is undefined. Undefined how? We're not extinct, Mara said. But we've disrupted the biosphere so severely that our role is ambiguous. The system doesn't know whether to keep us or replace us. Kaito's face paled. So it's waiting for input. Mara nodded. It's waiting to see if we can coexist with the restored world. And if we can't? Mara didn't answer. The first contact. The Neanderthal began to speak. Not in words. In sounds, grunts, clicks, rhythmic pulses. But the pattern was unmistakable. It was language, primitive but structured. Mara recorded the sounds and ran them through a linguistic model. The output was crude, but one phrase emerged with startling clarity. Join cycle. Kaito stared at the translation. It wants us to participate. In what? Mara asked. The Neanderthal pointed at the biomass. Then at Mara. Then at the world beyond the chamber. A sequence. A choice. Kaito whispered. It's offering integration. Mara felt a chill. Or assimilation. The Neanderthal stepped closer to the glass. Its eyes were calm, patient, expectant, as if waiting for humanity's answer. Part 3. The quiet expansion. The replacement cycle accelerated. Not explosively, not with the dramatic force of an invasion, but with a quiet, steady inevitability. Satellite imagery showed the pattern clearly. The alien ecosystems were spreading in fractal shapes, branching outward from initial emergence points like frost on glass. But the spread wasn't uniform. Some regions transformed rapidly, areas with severe ecological degradation, deforestation, or species collapse. Others remained untouched, as if the cycle were evaluating them and finding no immediate need for intervention. Cities remained mostly intact. For now, Mara watched the global map from the Black Ridge Command Center. The colors were shifting daily, greens deepening into prehistoric hues, blues brightening into unfamiliar tones. The world looked like a palimpsest, layers of past and future ecosystems written over the present. It's accelerating, Kaito said, but still avoiding dense human populations. Not out of mercy, Mara said. Out of assessment. Kaito nodded. It's waiting to see what we do. The failed countermeasure. Under pressure from multiple governments, the Interplanetary Research Council authorized a controlled test, a sterilization strike on a replacement zone in northern Australia. The area had transformed into a mosaic of ancient wetlands and alien vegetation, with no human population nearby. A drone released a payload of high-temperature plasma designed to neutralize biological material without spreading contaminants. The strike vaporized the target zone. For 6 hours, the area remained barren. Then the ground began to move. Mara watched the live feed with a sinking feeling. The soil rippled like water. Vines emerged from beneath the surface, growing at impossible speed. Within minutes, the entire zone was restored, denser, more complex, more resilient than before. It adapted, Kaito said quietly. No, Mara said. It anticipated. The replacement cycle had rebuilt the ecosystem using a different configuration, one that resisted heat, dryness, and chemical sterilization. Sloane's voice crackled through the comms. We escalate. Mara closed her eyes. Escalation won't work. It will only teach it faster. The turning point. The turning point came from an unexpected place. In the transformed valley in Brazil, the one where the future hominids had appeared, researchers observed something new. The hominids were building structures. Not shelters, not tools, patterns, circles of stones, arrangements of branches, spirals traced in the soil. Mara studied the drone footage. These aren't dwellings, they're signals. Kaito leaned closer. Signals to what? The hominids moved with purpose, placing each object with deliberate care. When they finished, they stood in the center of the pattern and looked upward, at the sky, at something only they could sense. Mara whispered, they're communicating with the cycle. The pulse. The next event was global. Sensors detected a low-frequency pulse emanating from multiple replacement zones simultaneously. The pulse wasn't sound. It wasn't electromagnetic. It was something deeper, an environmental resonance that passed through soil, water, and air. Humans felt it as a pressure behind the eyes, a momentary dizziness, a sense of being observed. Animals reacted more strongly. Birds fell silent. Dogs whimpered. Whales changed migration patterns overnight. The pulse lasted exactly 90 seconds. When it ended, the world felt subtly different. as if the atmosphere itself had shifted. What was that? Sloane demanded. Mara stared at the data. A synchronization event. Synchronization of what? Everything. The message in the pulse. Kaito isolated the pulse's structure. It wasn't random. It contained repeating sequences, mathematical ratios, fractal patterns, recursive loops. It's a message, he said, but not in any language we know. Mara studied the waveform. It's not meant to be read. It's meant to be felt. Kaito frowned. Felt? Biological systems respond to patterns. Heart rhythms, neural oscillations, circadian cycles. This pulse is interacting with those systems. Interacting how? Mara hesitated. Stabilizing them. Kaito stared. It's regulating the biosphere. Or preparing it. The human response. Panic spread across the world. Some communities fled replacement zones. Others formed militias, convinced the cycle was a hostile force. Some religious groups embraced the changes as divine intervention. Others condemned them as apocalyptic. Governments struggled to maintain order. But something unexpected happened. In regions where people remained calm, where they observed the changes without attacking them, the replacement zones stabilized. The alien ecosystems grew around human settlements without encroaching on them. In regions where people reacted violently, burning vegetation, killing replacement organisms, the cycle responded with rapid adaptation, creating more resilient species and expanding faster. It's responding to behavior, Mara said. It's evaluating us based on how we interact with the restored ecosystems. Kaito nodded. It's testing compatibility. The Neanderthal speaks again. The Neanderthal in the containment chamber began producing new vocalizations, longer sequences, more structured patterns. Mara recorded them and ran them through the linguistic model. The output was clearer this time. Cycle sees. Cycle learns. Cycle waits. Mara approached the glass. Waits for what? The Neanderthal touched the barrier. Choice. Kaito swallowed. What choice? The Neanderthal pointed at Mara, then at itself, then at the world outside. A sequence. A decision. Mara whispered. It wants to know if we choose coexistence. The first true contact. The contact came at dawn. A replacement zone in Kenya, one of the earliest and most complex, began to shift. The vegetation parted, forming a circular clearing. The ground smoothed itself into a reflective surface, like polished stone. A figure emerged. Not a hominid, not an animal, not a plant, something new. Its form was humanoid, but fluid, composed of interwoven vines, bioluminescent filaments, and translucent membranes. It moved with a grace that felt both organic and deliberate. Mara watched the live feed, breath caught in her throat. Kaito whispered, "It's a representative." The figure raised its hand. The ground beneath it pulsed with soft light. A pattern spread outward, circles within circles, spirals within spirals. A message. Mara leaned closer to the screen. It's inviting communication. The journey to Kenya. The council authorized a diplomatic mission, if the term could even apply. Mara and Kaito were chosen to lead it, accompanied by a small team of scientists and observers. The journey was surreal. As their transport descended toward the replacement zone, they saw ecosystems layered like geological strata. Modern savanna blending into prehistoric wetlands, alien forests rising beside familiar acacia trees. The representative waited in the clearing. It did not move as they approached. It simply watched. Mara stepped forward. "We come to communicate." The figure tilted its head. His body shifted subtly, filaments rearranging into new patterns. A voice emerged. Not spoken, but resonant, vibrating through the air like a harmonic. "Cycle hears." Mara felt the words more than she heard them. They resonated in her chest, in her bones. Kaito whispered, "It's using environmental resonance to communicate." Mara steadied herself. "Why are you here?" The figure's form rippled. "World wounded. Cycle repairs. Mara swallowed. Repairs by replacing? Replace. Restore. Renew. Why extinct species? Gaps must be filled. Why hominids? The figure paused. Human niche unclear. Mara felt a chill. Are we being replaced? The figure stepped closer. Cycle waits for choice. The choice. Mara took a breath. What choice? The representative extended its hand. Vines unfurled, revealing a glowing seed-like structure. Join cycle. Kaito whispered. Integration. Mara shook her head. Or assimilation. The figure's voice resonated again. Cycle adapts. Cycle includes. Cycle learns from all. Mara stared at the seed. If we refuse? The representative's form dimmed slightly. Cycle continues. With or without. Kaito stepped forward. What does joining mean? The figure touched the ground. A wave of bioluminescence spread outward, showing images. Plants growing alongside human structures. Animals coexisting with restored ecosystems. Humans living in harmony with the new biomes. Then another image, humans resisting, ecosystems overwhelming them, cities abandoned. Two paths. Two futures. Mara felt the weight of it. The cycle wasn't an enemy. It was a force of restoration. But restoration didn't guarantee survival. The turning of minds. The representative stepped back, giving them space. Mara whispered, "It's offering partnership." Kaito nodded. But on its terms. Terms that require us to change. Or be changed. Mara looked at the seed in the representative's hand. A symbol. A question. A threshold. She didn't take it. Not yet. But she didn't step away either. The representative's voice resonated softly. Cycle waits. Part 4. The new equilibrium. The representative's clearing in Kenya became the center of a global shift. Not a political shift. Not a military one. An ecological one. Replacement zones stabilized around it, forming concentric rings of ancient and alien biomes. The new hominids, the tall, slender ones from Brazil, the robust Neanderthals from Black Ridge, the delicate, long-limbed variants from Southeast Asia, began to appear in coordinated patterns. They weren't invading. They were settling. Mara watched the satellite feeds with a hollow feeling. They're forming territories. Kaito nodded. Not pushing outward, just establishing themselves. Like any species finding its niche. Exactly. Human settlements remained intact. Cities still functioned. People still lived, worked, argued, and worried. But the world around them was no longer theirs. It was becoming something else. The vanishing relevance. The first sign of humanity's diminishing role came quietly. Crop yields dropped. Not catastrophically, but steadily. Not because the soil was poisoned or the weather changed, but because the new ecosystems simply didn't interact with human agriculture. Pollinators ignored human crops, preferring the ancient flora. Soil microbes shifted toward supporting the replacement plants. Humanity could still grow food. It just took more effort, more artificial environments, more controlled systems, more separation from the natural world. Kaito summarized it in a single sentence. We're becoming a zoo species. Mara didn't disagree. The new hominids thrive. The new hominids adapted effortlessly. They moved through the transformed landscapes with ease, harvesting fruits from alien vines, drinking from bioluminescent pools, sleeping in woven nests of living branches. They communicated with each other in complex vocalizations and gestures. They interacted with the replacement fauna as if they were part of the same design. They were. Mara observed a group of them in Kenya, a mixed band of Neanderthals, future hominids, and something in between. They cooperated seamlessly, sharing food, tools, and information. They're not separate species, she said. They're variations of a single adaptive lineage. Kaito nodded. A lineage optimized for the new biosphere. And we're not. The quiet cities. Cities became islands. Not besieged, not attacked, just bypassed. Replacement ecosystems grew around them, forming natural boundaries. Roads became overgrown with ancient ferns. Highways cracked under the roots of towering lycophytes. Airports became sanctuaries for prehistoric insects. But the cities themselves remained untouched. The cycle seemed to recognize them as anomalies, artificial constructs outside the ecological ledger. It didn't overwrite them. It simply ignored them. Humanity lived inside these islands, maintaining infrastructure, rationing resources, and watching the world change beyond the perimeter. Life continued, but it felt like living in a museum. The representative returns. The representative, the humanoid figure of vines and light, appeared again, this time at the edge of Nairobi. It stood at the boundary where the replacement forest met the city's outskirts. Mara and Kaito approached cautiously. The representative inclined its head. Cycle stabilizes. Mara swallowed. What happens now? World renews. And us? The representative's form shifted, filaments rearranging into a pattern that resembled a branching tree. Human path diverges. Kaito frowned. Diverges how? Cycle includes all who adapt. Mara felt the weight of the words. And those who don't? The representative didn't answer. It didn't need to. The drift. Humanity didn't die out. It drifted. Birth rates declined not to zero, but to a slow, steady trickle. Not because of infertility, but because fewer people chose to bring children into a world that no longer felt like theirs. Migration patterns changed. People moved toward cities, clustering in dense urban centers where the old world still existed. Rural areas emptied, becoming vast expanses of replacement biomes. Human culture persisted: art, music, stories, technology, but it felt increasingly disconnected from the living world outside. Mara described it in her notes. We are becoming spectators to our own planet. The new dominance. The new hominids spread across the continents. Not rapidly, not aggressively, but steadily. They formed communities, not cities, but ecological hubs. They cultivated the replacement flora, guided the growth of living structures, and interacted with the alien fauna in ways that suggested a deep, instinctive understanding. They didn't replace humanity through conflict. They replaced humanity through relevance. They were better suited to the new world, better integrated, better adapted. Humanity watched from behind glass and concrete. The last field study. Mara insisted on one final field study. She and Kaito traveled to a remote region in what had once been northern India, now a vast expanse of ancient forest and alien wetlands. They observed a group of new hominids constructing a structure from living vines. It's a dwelling, Kaito said. No, Mara said softly. It's a nursery. Inside the structure, small hominid infants slept in woven cradles of bioluminescent leaves. Replacement insects tended to them, cleaning their skin and regulating temperature. It's a complete system, Mara whispered. Every organism plays a role. And we don't. Mara didn't respond. The realization. That night, Mara sat alone at the edge of the replacement forest. The air was warm, filled with the hum of ancient insects and the glow of alien spores. She felt the truth settle over her like a weight. The cycle wasn't hostile. It wasn't benevolent. It wasn't moral or immoral. It was ecological. A system designed to restore balance, maximize resilience, and ensure continuity. Humanity had disrupted that balance. The cycle had corrected it. Not by killing humans. Not by erasing them. But by making them unnecessary. Mara whispered into the darkness. We're not the protagonists anymore. The forest answered with a soft, resonant pulse. The final contact. The representative appeared one last time. It stood beside Mara, its form shimmering with soft light. Cycle complete. Mara nodded. And us? The representative extended a hand toward the city lights in the distance. Human path continues. Separate. Parallel. Mara felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. We're not part of the world anymore. World includes all who belong. And we don't. The representative's form dimmed slightly. Belonging is choice. Mara closed her eyes. The new world. Years passed. Humanity remained in cities, in enclaves, in isolated pockets of the old world. Technology advanced. Culture evolved. Life continued. But the planet belonged to the replacement cycle now. Forests of ancient and alien flora covered the continents. Rivers flowed along new paths. The new hominids thrived, forming a global network of ecological communities. Humanity watched from the sidelines. Not extinct, not erased, just irrelevant. A species out of place in its own home. Mara wrote the final entry in her journal. We are the ghosts of a world that moved on without us. Epilogue. The long quiet. Decades passed, and the world settled into a strange, stable rhythm. Humanity endured, but the planet no longer revolved around it. The new ecosystems, ancient, alien, recursive, filled every space that humans no longer tended. Forests of towering lycophytes stretched across continents. Wetlands shimmered with bioluminescent spores. The new hominids moved through it all with the ease of creatures perfectly matched to their environment. Human cities remained as islands of the old world. Not besieged, not threatened, simply bypassed. Children grew up behind glass and concrete, learning about the outside world the way earlier generations learned about distant planets. They watched documentaries about the new hominids the way people once watched wildlife films, fascinated, detached, aware that the subjects on screen were better suited to the Earth than they were. Humanity had become a cultural species, not an ecological one. The Last Field Journal. Mara Elling's final journal was found years after her death, preserved in a climate-controlled archive in Oslo. The pages were filled with observations, sketches, and reflections. Not scientific reports, but something quieter, more personal. One entry read, "We were never promised permanence. The planet is older than us, wiser than us, patient beyond measure. We mistook our moment for ownership." Another, "The new hominids do not hate us. They do not love us. They simply do not need us." And the last, "Perhaps relevance was always temporary. Perhaps our role was to build the world that would come after us. If so, we succeeded." The city at the edge of the forest. In what had once been northern India, a small human settlement stood at the boundary between the old world and the new. The people there lived simply, not out of necessity but out of choice. They grew food in controlled greenhouses, taught their children history and art, and watched the replacement forest glow at night with soft, shifting light. Sometimes the new hominids approached the settlement. They never crossed the boundary. They never intruded. They simply watched, curious but distant, like travelers observing a relic of an earlier age. One evening, a young girl stood at the edge of the settlement, staring into the forest. A tall, slender hominid stepped forward, its bioluminescent markings pulsing softly. The two regarded each other in silence. Not enemies, not allies, just two branches of a tree that had grown in different directions. The girl raised her hand. The hominid mirrored the gesture. Then it turned and vanished into the glowing undergrowth. The representative's last visit. The representative, the being of vines and light, appeared only once more. It came to the outskirts of Nairobi, where the city's perimeter met the replacement savanna. Its form was dimmer now, less defined, as if its purpose were nearly fulfilled. A group of researchers approached cautiously. The representative spoke in its resonant, harmonic voice. Cycle complete. Balance restored. One of the researchers asked, "What becomes of us?" The representative's form flickered, then stabilized. Human path continues. Different. Parallel. Will we ever be part of the cycle again? A long pause. Belonging is choice. Adaptation is choice. Cycle does not close. Then it dissolved into a cascade of spores that drifted upward and vanished into the dawn. The world that followed. Centuries later, Earth was a tapestry of intertwined biomes, ancient, alien, and human-made. The new hominids thrived, forming a global network of ecological communities. They shaped the world gently, guiding growth rather than forcing it. Humanity persisted in enclaves, smaller, quieter, but still creative, still curious. They built art, music, stories, and technologies that reflected their new place in the world. They were no longer the dominant species, but dominance had never been the point. They were observers, witnesses, archivists of a world that had moved beyond them, and in that role they found a kind of peace. The final image. A satellite orbiting Earth captured a photograph that became iconic in the centuries that followed. The planet glowed with deep greens and shimmering blues. Vast forests pulsed with bioluminescent life. Rivers traced new paths across continents. The cities, small clusters of light, were scattered like constellations across the surface. Two worlds, intertwined but separate. Two futures, coexisting without conflict. Two species, each following its own path. The caption historians later gave the image was simple. We remained, the world changed, and that was enough. This is the end of the sci-fi story, The Replacement Cycle. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.